Welcome to Snyder's Inc., where the fun never ends. Reactions, gaming, and more with Josh as your friend. Tune in, buckle up, it's a ride you don't wanna miss. Snyder's Inc., let's dive in, feel the ultimate bliss.
Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. And today we've got a wrestling reaction. And it goes: the 11 greatest post WrestleMania WWE debuts ever. And we're gonna get right into it. But ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button, hit subscribe button, comment, stick down below. If you'd like to help me out and donate to the channel, you can leave a super thanks or a link to my PayPal's in the description. Let's go.
By God, I can't believe MJF showed up last night and cost Cody Rhodes that tag match by ripping off his neck tattoo and eating it. I was sure they were going to save that for the Raw after WrestleMania. The Raw after WrestleMania has had its fair share of peaks and valleys over the last decade, and by extension so too have the debuts we have seen on the week of shows that follow WWE's biggest show of the year. Some have been absolutely monumental, some have been decent but not impressive, and some have been the peak of that star's entire main roster run. Thankfully, on this glorious WrestleMania Sunday, we will be looking at the best of the bunch and leave the worst for next week when the post-Mania blues have really set in. I'm Tempest, hailing from Parts Unknown, and these are the 11 greatest post-WrestleMania debuts ever. But before we get on with this, so let's make sure, of course, that you like this video and subscribe to Parts Unknown so you never miss a WrestleMania list just like it, like the plethora of lists we have done over the last month. Before we get started, keep in mind these are debuts we are talking about here, not returns, so X-Pac in '98 or Tensai in 2012 won't be seen here, just in case you were waiting to hear the name Lord Tensai for some reason. Number 11, Ember Moon.
I mean, he's on the worst. Here's a little spoiler for you that's coming. I think in tomorrow's video, in tomorrow's stuff, well, yeah, technically tomorrow, but yeah. Anyways, this is gonna be this isn't good. This is good. Ember Moon. She had a tag match where she debuted team of Nia Jax for some reason and as baby faces because that was Nia's weird babyface move, and she eclipsed Alexa Bliss, I think, to hell, and yeah, good introduction for Ember Moon. Unfortunately, she never went anywhere after.
Fresh off her run as NXT Women's Champion, Ember Moon arrived on the main roster the day after WrestleMania 34 as the surprise tag partner of new Raw Women's Champion Nia Jax. The duo took on and defeated the Mean Girl pairing of Alexa Bliss and Mickie James, with Moon shining as the featured performer of the match. Moon's main roster run amounted to a whole lot of nothing, which is particularly disappointing to anyone who has had the pleasure of watching her epic run in Ring of Honor over the last year. She is capable of so much.
That's why I will be shocked if she ever goes back to WWE. She is on a fucking roll. The only reason I can see her ever going back to WWE is she just can never get out of Ring of Honor, because Jesus, she needs to get out of that damn place. Then back on AEW TV.
Much more than what WWE gave her, and that could be said about most NXT call-ups of the era, but a strong debut in front of a hot crowd is enough to land her a spot on this list. Number 10, Tye Dillinger. Is Tye Dillinger number 10 again? It's satisfying. Anyway, Tye Dillinger was the beloved underdog babyface of the early days of NXT.
Oh, that's why you missed the thing. Of course you made him 10.
Dazzling fans with his ability to show all 10 figures like a toddler when asked how high they can count. On the SmackDown following WrestleMania 33, not beloved underdog idiot Kurt Hawkins was demanding an opponent when Dillinger arrived to the cheers of the Orlando faithful. Dillinger played the hits, did the 10 thing, won, everybody was happy. But as is the case with many of these NXT folk, the happiness wouldn't last long. Dillinger picked up wins into the summer, sure, but soon enough Dillinger had everything cool stripped away from him. He was no longer allowed to count, and even his finisher, the tiebreaker, or the Ushigoroshi for my fellow nerds out there, had to be changed to a similar but decidedly worse move. He may have another chance at a main roster debut, this time as Sean the Man Who Likes Chairs, but he'll need to crank it up to 11 to have a better debut than the perfect 10. Number 9, Neville. Somehow the only person on this list to lose their first name in transit on their way up from NXT, but the former Adrian Neville did find a silly purple cape when he made his WWE debut the night after the
Look, we can say whatever, Neville didn't have the greatest run, but Neville was treated way better than most columns were. He got the superhero SummerSlam match. He had a good match with Seth Rollins. He always put up great performances. You can't say whatever. Neville was never as bad. It was not as bad as some out to be.
The much-lauded WrestleMania 31. Fan excitement was at a level it had not been for a very long time in WWE, and that enthusiasm takes this debut a long way, as functionally, it's just Neville beating Curtis Axel quickly and decisively, but people are into it. This was still very early on in the days of NXT stars arriving after WrestleMania, so it still feels like a bit of a surprise. The Lucha Dragons also debuted, or re-debuted in the case of Sin Cara, on this show, so unless you were the world's biggest fan of Kalisto, the man that gravity forgot was most definitely the biggest debut of the night. Number 8, Shinsuke Nakamura. On the very same night that Ty Dillinger arrived on SmackDown, we got the half-awesome, half-bizarre main roster debut of Shinsuke Nakamura.
Oh yeah, because he came up, interrupted The Miz, they left, he did his whole entrance, and that was it. It's very weird. Very weird.
Coming off an underrated takeover main event with Bobby Roode, Nakamura interrupted The Miz and Maurice's attempt at a John Cena Nikki Bella cosplay in the coolest way possible. Nakamura's personal violinist Lee England performed the Nakamura Prelude before the song of the man himself echoed through the building with all the accompanying whoas you would expect from a Mania crowd. Nakamura arrived on SmackDown with all his aura from NXT on full display, and had he transitioned this reaction to an impactful first moment on the main roster, this may have reached the heights of the debuts we have yet to get to. But he doesn't do anything! He walks out, struts around the ring, and then WWE just throw to a graphic talking about what the Wyatt family match was that night. I'm sorry? Where did the Miz's go? You couldn't find one thing for Nakamura to do besides smile and wave? Like I said, half awesome, half bizarre. Number 7, Umaga. Throwing it back.
Umaga. Yamanga. Umaga. And it's not just Umaga. It is Armando Alejandro Estrada. Oh, Umaga goes in the Hall of Fame. If he does not show up, I will be so angry.
Back to the days before NXT for a moment, the Raw after Mania 22 was not a good one, featuring such highlights as the Spirit Squad winning the tag titles and Vince McMahon announcing his intentions to punch God in the face or something. The one highlight of this shambolic episode of Raw was the debut of the Samoan bulldozer and excellent worker, Umaga. Ric Flair announces his intentions to win a 17th World Championship when he is interrupted and subsequently murdered by Umaga, debuting alongside Armando Alejandro Estrada. Rolls off the tongue like silk. The Samoan Savage gimmick has never really sat well with me, much less as recently as the mid-2000s, but Umaga would go on to be a massive player in WWE's main event scene for the next few years, with his matches with John Cena serving as a career highlight. And while some of these debuts feel like a debut out of necessity for a post-Mania pop, Umaga's debut had purpose and should be revered accordingly. Number 6, The Revival. Say yeah. Yeah. No. Stop it. Not you. The week after.
Say yeah. Hard all day all night, and pass them below me ready to fight. Say yeah. That could get very over as a babyface thing if they wanted to. I think that could get very over.
After WrestleMania 33 was a good one for debuts, as this is the third one on this list, but while Ty Dillinger and Shinsuke Nakamura may have both received the fanfare necessary for a great debut, the Revival were the ones that did the most with it. FTR had their NXT farewells at TakeOver Orlando in a fantastic three-way battle of the acronyms with DIY and AOP, and while the Revival's WWE runs were beset with injuries right out of the gate, and that did do a lot to kill their momentum, for their first night on the main roster, the no-nonsense Revival being put opposite the all-nonsense New Day was a perfect move. This rivalry could have been legendary had fate not stood in the way, but this debut gave us all a taste of what we would be missing. Number 5, Mankind. That's right, y'all, the Raw after WrestleMania debut isn't a new thing. When Mick Foley arrived in WWE, those at the top sure had some wacky ideas for him, namely being called Mason the Mutilator, who I'm sure would have made magic with the Ringmaster, but thankfully the creative mind of Mrs. Foley's baby boy was put to work on the double. Mick is recalled coming up with the ideas for the name Mankind and the use of different intro and outro music for the character, and thankfully, WWE went with every one of his ideas. What Mick didn't anticipate, however, was just how big a deal he would become in WWE and how fast that would happen. Foley beats Bob Holly and his spark plugs in the first match of the night, and then reappears at the end of the show attacking and starting a career-defining rivalry with The Undertaker. It is a bit lacking in the pomp and circumstance department, as even though this is the night after WrestleMania 12, it is still a Raw crowd from 1996. But still, in terms of sheer importance, you won't find many more impactful debuts after a WrestleMania than Mankind, the Mutilator.
I'm curious what number one's gonna be. I feel like they'll say it and I'll be like, oh, of course, but like, I'm actually curious, because I can't think of a single one that stands out above the rest. But maybe that's just my forgetfulness.
4. Enzo and Cass. The Raw after Mania 32 is a very strange show. It mostly felt like it was trying to undo the decisions of WrestleMania. Shane gets control, Ryder loses the IC title, AJ becomes #1 contender. It is a tonally dissonant show. However, the moment of the show that has received near universal praise was that of the arrival of Enzo Amore, who was a certified G and a bona fide stud, and Big Cass, who is 7 foot tall, and I don't know about you, but I've never seen a class advertised for either of those things. Must be impossible to teach or something. For all his faults, you give Enzo Amore his silly microphone and he will produce a promo that makes people react. He roasted the Dudleys and put this NXT team on the map to such an extent that just a few months later, they were teaming with John Cena on pay-per-view. Few NXT debuts have seized their moment quite like the leopard-spotted Gecko and his tall friend. It is just a shame that WWE promptly saw this and thought to themselves, how soon can we make the tall friend a single star? Number 3, Brock Lesnar. No, not 2012.
Oh yeah, he did debut after me. For some reason I forget that.
Well, that is a return, you silly Billy. No, instead we have to wind the clocks back a decade earlier to the night after.
This is just because of he kills Spike Dudley, he takes out Maven, takes out Al Snow, have Heyman with him. The sheer importance of his debut is more than the actual debut itself. Because you debut probably one of the single greatest superstars in WWE history.
To WrestleMania 18.
My favorite, one of my top 3 favorite wrestlers ever.
The Montreal crowd may not have known exactly who Brock Lesnar was when he turned up mid-match to run through the hardcore goofy goobers of Maven, Al Snow, and Spike Dudley, but by the end of this minute-long beatdown, I'm sure many of my fellow Canucks knew they were seeing the next big thing with Paul Heyman by his side. The power bombs that poor Spike Dudley had to take are sickening, and they just keep coming. Add in one of the most picture-perfect F5s of all time to Maven, and you have the most destructive debut after Mania in history. If you're gonna debut a new top star, there isn't much more you could have done besides just giving that person the title, but we might just get to that shortly. Number 2, Goldberg.
Oh, number one's Paige. Number one's Paige. Get.
Goldberg's year-long foray into the WWE world starting in 2003 is not regarded very highly, given that he was stapled to Triple H for half of it while Triple H was at his most tedious, but overall Goldberg just wasn't a fit. His style didn't mesh with the WWE main event style of the time, still looking at you Triple H, and he wasn't made to look nearly as cool or as badass as he was during his heyday in WCW. That is, except for this night. On the night after WrestleMania 19, The Rock announced that at 30 years of age, he had done it all and would be leaving the WWE, only to be interrupted by the long built-up entrance of the debuting Goldberg. Gorg told The Rock if he was asking what is next for The Rock, he had an answer. The Rock was next, and Goldberg gave him one hell of a spear. The match they had at Backlash wasn't particularly good, but one of the biggest stars in WCW history and one of the biggest stars in WWE history squaring off felt like everything the invasion should have been, even if Goldberg's run just goes to show why most WCW stars didn't want to come to WWE at all. And number 1, Paige. Like I said, what more can you do to have someone debut as the new top star than put the belt on them immediately? After a lengthy time in NXT as their women's champion, the Raw after Mania 30 featured the debut of the 21-year-old Paige, who interrupted Divas champion AJ Lee and promptly defeated her for that horrible title. Here's a comparison I bet you weren't expecting to hear today, but this kind of is WWE's version of New Japan Pro Wrestling's Rainmaker Shock of 2012. The reigning champion has set all the records possible with their given title. They have just defended the belt at the biggest show of the year, and then they drop it to a complete newcomer, resulting in a brand new star. I mean, I don't know if I would go so far as to say that Paige is WWE's Okada, but otherwise the comparison is basically one for one. Hell, this was so big that it became the climax of a major Hollywood movie, which will never not be surreal to me. But in terms of a post-WrestleMania debut, and in particular ones that are NXT call-ups, we are still waiting for someone to top the girl from Norwich. I'm so sorry. Norwich. It's Norwich. Apparently this is a big deal to them. I'm so sorry. And that's our...
Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this reaction video. Let me know who you think is the greatest post-WrestleMania debut ever in WWE in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe.